Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. Thank you very much. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I mean, I'm a bit of a gym buff, and I'm a sort of walking wounded individual when it comes to the gym. I've done my knees, I've done my elbows, I commonly do my back, um, but I keep
It's,
going back. I keep going back, and one of the reasons why I do this kind of talking and broadcasting, and I don't know what to call it really, sort of amateur broadcaster. It's because I used to do videos in the gym,
oh,
and
right.
I used to video myself on the cross trainer and the treadmill, and just doing random videos, and that kind of got me in trouble with a number of Facebook groups, medical Facebook groups,
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
and they thought I was a bit too judgmental. You know, I
Why,
was kind
what
of,
were you saying in these videos?
oh, get out of bed, get into the gym, get sweating, come on,
I see. I
guys,
see.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's
And
funny you should mention that. I'm not really much of a gym goer, but I've been going a lot this week. I'm trying to make it a habit. And yeah, I'm already feeling a niggle in the knee and berating my age. Happens to us all though, doesn't it? But
yeah,
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 I generally
yeah.
feel good for having been though. So yeah, it's good.
No, I mean, I find it sort of a godsend, really. Something that, I mean, I've always done it, to be honest. I think since the age of, I think from 15, 16,
Oh, right.
I went to the gym. And it's such a great way of, because I'm quite outgoing individual. And for extroverts like myself, if there's no extrovert activity you can divulge in.
You need that energy release and yeah.
I mean, I definitely had ADHD when I was a child in school. I could never sit still, always fidgeting
Right.
and always on the go. And then I mean, I always did sport, really. um but yeah, gym was a great way of just kind of calming me
Yeah.
down.
Positive outlet for all that energy.
Yeah. Are you, what kind of person are you? Would you say you're sort of extroverted or not really?
And I'm probably there on the introverted side of things, but it depends on the situation, as I think all of these things do. Put me in my sweet spot, and I'm
So
probably a
in your
further
sweet spot,
person. But in
so
other situations,
so in your sweet spot, you're quite outgoing.
yeah, I think so. When I feel really comfortable around friends and family, or maybe a topic I'm particularly interested in, those that that's when the confidence comes soaring, and yeah, happy
I mean, would you say
to be
that's something?
a face or a
I mean, would you see that? Would you say that that's something to do with sort of strategic thinking? That sort of introverts are more strategic in thinking. I mean, because I'm not strategic at all. I'm literally just like, there's no
right.
strategy involved whatsoever, because I'm always out there in the unknown.
Right. Have you ever done the sort of insights? I think it normally comes in a wheel or a grid, and you're a different color, like a green or a red, and the green is opposite to the red. Have you done anything like that before, like
Yeah,
personality?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I have. Yeah.
No, on the insights people development, I think it's called. I'm very much a green, which is sort of on the introverted, but also sort of quite self-reflective. I don't know whether that's the same for everybody. That if you're introverted, you're a bit more strategic. I don't know, but I'm definitely someone who likes to sort of ruminate on things and sort of come back a bit later on with my thoughts in order, rather than that sort of red, slightly more sort of fiery, assertive, and get things done immediately. Chop, chop, chop. Here's my thoughts and go. I'm a bit more of a like to think about things kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of hot red burning sort of thing.
Do you think
Literally
so?
just
Yeah.
keep going until it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Luckily, with
You get
time,
stuff done, right? You get stuff done.
yeah, but it's all wrong.
I
It's all wrong.
bet the wins are great, but the losses, could be
Yeah,
could
I
be
mean, it's mainly losses. It's mainly losses, and you realize that there's only so much areas that you can win in, which is really small sort of thing. It's like,
Yeah,
right,
but it's
okay,
not like every approach is going to win every time either. So
yeah, yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
you need a quick assertive decision rather than someone who's going to sort of prefer to take their time over a decision, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, this is where, other people come in and society comes in and community and, so that we can get the full gamut of flavors
Yeah,
of people.
yeah, I think it's important to have that mixture of people on a team to make it successful. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if someone does say do this, I just do it, and I've always been that way. Never think about it. But yeah, as I'm getting these gray hairs, definitely slowing down, and I quite like it because you don't get hurt as much. You don't look like a fool as much as well. So that's nice. But sort of being put in leadership positions, it's a difficult one, because you do need to keep the ship moving, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's always an element of grass is always greener as well, though. So like I'm sat here thinking, oh, actually, I wish I was a bit more like you've just said sometimes. And now you're sitting there saying, actually, I wish I was not always going in all guns blazing. So I think there's always an element of grass is greener, and yeah, like I say, you need a mixture of personalities on a team, or a mindset where you're able to take in different people's perspectives or ways of approaching things.
Yeah, I mean, I've always found it difficult to take that, and maybe that's why I'm doing the podcast, is just to kind of slow me down and listen to other people and actually learn a lot more. And that's what changed my mindset and changed my perspective and got me out of my stress and burnout at the time.
Oh, really? The podcasting, that's really cool.
Yeah,
That yeah.
yeah, because I was just too stuck in my in my own head and too stuck in my own stories and narratives and perspectives.
Yeah, which is easily done. I think we're all guilty of that at times.
Yeah, no, we are. And what was your kind of what was your
Yeah, I mean,
reason for going into marketing? Because you've always been in marketing.
yeah, well, so at university I did I always knew I wanted to do something in business, so I did a business degree at uni, which many people tell me isn't a real degree compared to medicine and that kind of thing.
Bollocks.
But yeah, so I actually did accounting, business and management with accounting at uni, but I didn't really love it, and I guess I sort of figured that was sort of looking at what's already happened at the business, whereas I quite like the idea of trying to generate sales and make things happen. And so I think marketing, just sort of having done the accounting for a couple of years, I think marketing just appealed, to try and look at that, be a bit more forward thinking, I suppose, and try and make something happen. And I ended up doing a really great graduate scheme. So it's a government backed thing called Knowledge Transfer Partnership, KTP. And it was the graduate scheme was to work with a small company, although you were technically employed by a university, and you work on a project basis. And my project was to create a marketing function for this small business, and I absolutely loved it. And it's been marketing ever since for me, really.
So why business? Why was your passion in business?
Well, I'm going to say it's going to sound a bit cliche. Like, I've just always loved it, and I've always sort of I've just always been fascinated by it and entrepreneurs. But it's not cliche, because normally you get those entrepreneurial types saying, oh, I was sort of selling sweets at playtime at school and all that kind of thing. I never really did any of that. I always sort of, I don't know, I guess more of an observer of it, but it always really fascinated me. So yeah, and my dad had his own business when I was younger as well, and I think I sort of looked up to that and thought that was really interesting. And I don't really know, to be honest. I just love the idea of it, really, and working with people and making stuff happen and creating value and sales and yeah.
What kind of business did you have?
My dad at the time was a draftsman. He did technical drawing for window systems. So he sort of worked in the building industry. So it was quite niche, quite a rare skill set. But then CAD systems came in, and a lot of it was automated. So he sort of evolved and did different things in the end. But it was. I just sort of loved it all. Everything from the business cards, the letterheads, and all of that. I don't know, just found it really interesting as a kid.
So he'd actually draw the drawings himself.
He would, yeah, do always like window profiles and things for aluminium window systems on commercial buildings. So had this sort of huge drawing board, and he'd have all these fine pens and big rulers and all sorts of things, and these giant photocopiers that could do like A1 sheets, and it all feels very old fashioned now. But like you say, we're getting older, and I'm feeling my age now telling you that story.
Did you sort of try, your hand in drawings and that kind of stuff?
No, I'm not really that sort of creative in that way. So I mean, people think about marketers being creative, but I'm definitely the person who sort of organizes the creative people. I think that's sort of my approach to marketing. I'm a bit more strategic in that way, I suppose. So I like to sort of think, right, what are the objectives, what are the goals, what are the resources, how am I going to develop a strategy from those constraints, what your objective is going to be, then what are the tactics going to be to deliver that strategy, and then it comes to the creative side of things, so whether that's web or graphic design or social, and that's the bit where I go, right, need to outsource that, or I need to work with somebody. So so I was never that sort of creative drawer kind of thing. My dad's a brilliant drawer, and I just it's not for me at all, I'm afraid.
Did you give him any strategies in terms of sort of business and stuff like that? Did he ask you about, what do you think of this? Or
I was very young, far too young at that point, still a school kid. So no, unfortunately didn't get to sort of delve into that. I just sort of saw the periphery of it, really, and like the designs of business cards and letterheads, as I say, and I just sort of found it all fascinating, seeing his name up there, and so I was quite young, really.
And who are your kind of sort of inspirational figures, when you're a teen and thinking about business and being the next billionaire?
I think that's a good question, actually. I mean, it's probably sort of the cliche, like Richard Branson and those types of people. Like, he was such a he's an extrovert, isn't he? He's the opposite of me in that perspective. He's very happy to be out there and put himself in all the ads and all that kind of stuff. But I was always reading biographies of business people like Alan Sugar and Duncan Bannatyne, and always reading something like that. So like I say, observing rather than really sort of partaking. So it's taken me till my late 30s before I actually really got involved in being entrepreneurial and trying to start up a business, really.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, for me, I was really interested in bodybuilding at the time. When I was a teenager, right. That was like the only thing on my mind, so to speak. And I used to buy so many bodybuilding magazines, and just seeing those pecs and seeing those abs and delts, that was the only thing on my mind. Obviously,
really?
There's
really
other things.
Gym bunny, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much, because it was such a great outlet, such a great place to be. And I mean, I came from quite a depressive household, so to speak. So the environment wasn't great.
Right.
And that was my outlet, so to speak. It was my way of relieving the family suffering I was in.
Right.
So
as we said, a positive outlet, really. It could have been a lot worse, couldn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it was sort of my way of outlet was to go to the gym. My parents' version of outlet was to study. So that was kind of the two things. Right. So, for me, primarily it was gym, and secondarily it was study, just to keep, the parents off my back, so to speak. But yeah, so you were sort of in this kind of entrepreneurial business early life. You went to university, which was a bit, didn't really tick the boxes.
Well, no, I really loved my time at uni. It was probably the making of me in terms of, you know, coming out of my shell a little bit more and, you know, being more confident in my, you know, personality, that kind of thing. So it was great from that perspective. I love most of the course, but just where it's, you know, really specialized in the accounting side of things, it just wasn't really for me. But you know, overall, I still really loved my time there. It was great. And then luckily got that job in marketing. Yeah, it's been marketing.
So it was a
since then,
small
really.
firm. What was the small firm doing?
So they worked in pharmaceutical regulatory affairs. So they're a small consultancy company. So they had a couple of regulatory consultants, and they were sort of quite sort of ahead of their time, really. So there was this new format of submitting documents for regulatory submission. So you go to the MHRA or EHA for you know, getting approval to sell medication. There's a new format of submitting all that document called ECTD, so Electronic Common Technical Dossier, and they'd invested heavily in this system, but it was really sort of slow to be adopted by pharma companies and the agencies around Europe. So there was that sort of real educational bit that we were doing to try and grow the market for I guess for everybody really, but really for ourselves as well. So it was really fascinating. Absolutely, we loved it. And no, I always say that I fell into sort of healthcare, and I did really, just I suppose because I didn't intend to do it. It's just that's what happened. That first job happened to be, but absolutely loved it really.
And you know, can you do marketing sort of in any sector? Is it sort of, you know, are there fundamentals in marketing in any sector?
Yeah, so there absolutely are, but that's a really interesting question because the job after that, I went to work for Bupa. Home healthcare, so which is like a home medication delivery and a community nursing company. And you know, I always felt like at the time I was interested in trying something different to healthcare, but the recruiter straight away went, "Oh, medication, medicine, yeah, here's a healthcare job," and that's what they were putting me forward for. So I always felt like I'd been like pigeonholed and forced into healthcare a little bit because I blame it on the recruiters. I'm probably being a bit unfair, but they would sort of easily go, right, that's it, you've done healthcare marketing and that's it, and that's what you can do, and that's what you're good at. But 100% there are principles in marketing that can be applied to absolutely every business. There are, you know, you could argue there's a little bit of difference between like direct to consumer, B2C type companies, business to consumer businesses, and B2B, but really it's absolutely there are principles that are transferable. I guess, you know, it just helps if you know the industry a little bit. You can hit the ground running a bit quicker if you sort of know things about how it works. But yeah, absolutely.
I mean this happens in introverts. You know, in introverts gets you know, they get to be pushed into certain directions and there's less pushback. So but you know, I mean, these things happen, and that's life for you.
Absolutely. But you know, to go from like a small 5-person company, and we did well, we grew it to 10, and then to have Bupa on my CV straight after that, it just felt right anyway to go for that. You know, go from a very small company to a multinational global company felt like a really good career move. And I learned so much from my time there. It's, you know, a very different beast working there. You know, you're a smaller cog in a much bigger organization, but you learn a lot about you know, structures and processes and things that you don't get in a smaller company. But in the smaller company, you learn to be a bit quicker on your feet, and you be a bit more reactive, and you know, get more sort of creative control, or you know, get to you know, come up with whole strategies. Whereas, you know, with a larger one, you can't. You're sort of, you know, you're given the direction to do and you're given your work to do, and that's it. So it was really great to form my career, really give me both of those mindsets.
And how did you change as a person going from a small business to a multinational?
I think, you have to learn to be a bit more corporate, if that's sort of the right way of putting it. You know, I don't say this disparagingly at all, because I loved my time at Bupa Home Healthcare, but you've got to learn to love a meeting. You know, you have meetings about meetings, and yeah, all that kind of thing. And you know, yeah, if we wanted to make a change on our website in a small company, you just go and make the change to your website. Whereas now you've got to get everything signed off, and it's got to have approval from nursing, from legal, and it's got to go up to the web team, and then they'll eventually queue it up. And you know, they've got people from all the different companies across Bupa wanting to make website changes as well. So there's lots of, you know, things you sort of have to learn and adapt to, and you sort of understand that's how it works in a much larger organization.
And how long were you with Bupa for? Because you were there for quite some time.
Yeah, I was there for 4 years in the end. So they went through quite a big restructure towards the end of my time there. So I went from just working with Bupa Home Healthcare to working, they created like a public sector marketing function. So I ended up doing a bit with care homes as well towards the end. And then actually they've now sold that company off, so it's not part of Bupa anymore. But when it became that bit more sort of, I don't know, corporately structured group, I got a lot more sort of interaction with like the insurance side of the business, and just sort of seeing what the rest of the business was doing a bit more. And so I found that really interesting. But yeah, healthcare provision, I guess, was really where I was doing my marketing, rather than for like an insurance product or something like that.
Yeah. And if you can tell us, you know, tell our listeners what the sort of fundamentals are. I mean, most of the listeners here are in the healthcare sector anyway. What are the sort of essential things that you need to tick off, and you know, really important in healthcare marketing?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, the first thing I would always, so you know, one of the things that I do within private practice surgery, which is the online membership that I've just started, is we've got a course around how to write a marketing plan that's really going to be effective for you, and it's you know, aimed specifically at consultants who have a private practice. That's sort of what we're all about. And there's a great model that I like to sort of use to create a business or a marketing plan like that, called SOSTAC. And that's sort of an acronym for situation. So you're looking at yourself as a product, as a service. You're looking at your customer, and you're looking at your competitors. That's your sort of situational analysis. Then you look at your objectives. So yeah, what is it you actually want to achieve? Because you know, without a proper, clear objective, you know, you're sort of all over the place, right? It can be chaotic, and you know, you can spend time doing the wrong thing. You can spend time, effort, money, resources, all of that doing the wrong things. That's not going to get you towards your objectives. So looking at your objectives, then it's looking at your strategy, then your tactics, and then looking at the action. So the people that you've got, the people resource to actually deliver some of those tactics that are going to deliver the strategy. Looking at the time you've got, looking at the money you've got, and do all of those things sort of fit? And you know, because it's all very well saying, you know, stupid numbers, I want £1 million revenue this year, but actually if you don't have the resources, and you know, or you know, let's use the example of a consultant. You want £1 million revenue, but and you know, I don't know, an average sale for you might be £4,000 or something for an operation, five grand. You know that you convert, for you know, a bit of a marketing term, but say you convert, or you know, you need 5 patients in outpatients to get that one surgery. So when you sort of work back those numbers, does that actually, are you ever going to actually achieve those objectives? So I get you to think about all of those, and using the resources and everything. Yeah, just to sort of check yourself, really make sure that those objectives are achievable with the resources you've got. And then it's about control and measurement. So, you know, you might find that the strategies aren't particularly working. So you need to then, you know, check back on those, tweak those strategies and those tactics to make sure you can deliver those objectives, rather than waiting till the end of the year and going, oh, right, well, that didn't really work. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but that's the plan that I generally like to use. It's called SOSTAC.
And are there any sort of common mistakes that a lot of doctors and sort of consultants make when they delve into the private practice world?
Well, I think generally a lot of businesses and companies in any industry tend to make the mistake of jumping straight into the communications and the messaging and not really doing that strategic thinking. So, not creating a patient or a GP persona. So not really understanding who your clients are, who your customers are. And so, yeah, doing that work and that sort of, I mean, it's harder to do, right? But I can almost guarantee that you will be more successful over time than you will be if you don't do that work. So yeah, that's a mistake that a lot of people do make. And I think sometimes, specifically healthcare marketing, and maybe for consultants specifically, it's not sort of always recognizing the opportunity. So it feels really obvious to talk about web profiles that you'll put on your hospital websites or the insurers. I think there's such an underrated bit of marketing communications that don't get the effort that they really require, because nobody looks at a consultant directory for fun, right? You only look at a consultant directory when you're looking to book someone, you're looking to find someone. So the number of profiles that I see that aren't really just basically copy and paste from a CV, essentially. They're not really trying to present themselves or pitch themselves as an ideal consultant for for a particular type of patient. And I just think it's a really real missed opportunity. So that's one of the things I'd say specifically for consultants as an example. But yeah, more generally, I'd say not sort of doing that prep work and jumping straight into the messaging and not really, because you can be hit or miss for that messaging, can't you, if you're just going over it and you haven't done that work in terms of working out what it is that really is important to your customer.
Yeah. And by the sounds of it, it doesn't, I mean, it shouldn't take too long, should it? These things.
No, not really. No, I mean, the problem, yeah, like I say, it is work, right? And it's work that a lot of people do try to put off. And say I'm working with consultants and they're ridiculously busy, and it is difficult to kind of carve out that time to do that. But like I say, if you do, you'll be more successful than you would if you didn't do it 100%. But,
yeah, I mean, it sort of begs the question, do they actually need to do this extra work? I mean, if they're busy in their, NHS work, do they actually need this sort of extra work?
If you want to start a private practice, then I think you should. And I've seen a number of consultants over the years who they get in, and it's sort of, obviously that sometimes they're surprised that they don't have a queue of patients waiting for them immediately on their private clinics. They don't realize that they've actually got to try and attract those patients. It's obviously not like your NHS hospital at all, but sometimes that does come as a bit of a surprise. So then what happens is they end up doing, a lot of hospitals end up doing some of the e-referral work, and so you are seeing patients, but it's NHS, and obviously it's not remunerated quite as well as if it was an insured patient or a self-pay patient. But then they get themselves in a situation where they're so busy doing that NHS work, and it's too high a proportion of your sort of case mix. So you're busy, but you could actually, financially, your performance could improve an awful lot if you saw the same number of patients, but just change that case mix slightly, and you saw less NHS and you saw more insured and self-pay. But making that transition can be quite difficult and quite tricky at times, unless you sort of have a real plan around it. So so I would absolutely say you definitely do need to put that work in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And is there kind of a mindset shift or a sort of a way that you have to think about things or look at things if you want to go into more private practice work compared to NHS work?
I think so. I mean, obviously everyone's different, right? And some people are a lot more commercially minded than others. But stage one of the pathway of courses that I have within private practice surgery, we do actually look at mindset, because I do have members who have said to me, I just feel a bit awkward about marketing, really. I feel a bit funny because we've got the NHS and it's wonderful, and I wouldn't want to be seen to be taking anything away from that. I feel awkward that it's I'm now sort of up against or competing with an old boss or something like that, and it just feels a bit awkward. You don't want to be seen to be sort of promoting yourself in when you're sort of chatting with colleagues, it just feels a bit awkward. So there is a bit of a mindset shift sometimes as well. Some consultants do have to sort of go through that process of thinking, actually, no, this is okay, this is perfectly legitimate and a perfectly okay thing to do. And then it's also about your approach to it. So everyone's got that view of the slimy used car salesman or dodgy internet marketer who promises you millions if you just sign up for this course or whatever. So you don't have to be like that. Like, really, marketing, and particularly in sort of private healthcare, secondary healthcare, is around making people know that you're available, and making it clear the types of patients that you want to see, and therefore you're going to end up attracting the right patients to you. So from a comms perspective, it is relatively simple. You don't have to be this sort of slick, smarmy, salesy, marketing-y person. It's not like that at all. So yeah, it's sometimes, and that's sometimes what people think marketing is. So it's sometimes that bit of a mindset shift, as you say.
And how long does it take for that to kind of change in your experience?
That's a great question. I guess it's different for everybody, and how long is a piece of string. But I think once you do sort of bite the bullet and you get into a private hospital and you see that you've got other colleagues doing what you're trying to do, I guess all of a sudden it doesn't seem quite such an alien concept. So it probably changes quite quickly, really, once you get going. But yeah, it's still something that you need to sort of think about. Well, I say not everybody. Some people are great. They want to jump straight in, and they can't wait to get started privately.
And
everyone's different.
Is there a difference between surgeons and physicians and GPs, or is it? I guess it depends on the temperament of the professional.
Yeah, I think it's more down to the individual professional. I think it'd be far too easy for me to say, surgeons are a lot more commercial and can't wait to start doing operations. I don't think it's really like that, to be honest. I think it's down to the individual.
Yeah. And I mean, sort of going forward and sort of into the future, do you think it's going to be more of a more of an uptake than before, given that there's a lot more issues going on in the NHS?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the latest figures out reasonably recently are over 6 million on the waiting list now, and such a big proportion are waiting over a year. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a demand there, and I think I don't really have like official figures, but I think over the years the number of consultants in private practice probably has dropped. But now that there's because they're doing lots of other things, there's lots of other exciting ways. You speak to a lot of sort of entrepreneurial doctors who are doing different things now, and that kind of thing on your podcast. But I think there's clearly such a big demand now, and I think we might start to see an increase in the number of doctors in private practice, to try and help alleviate that demand, really. And at the end of the day, people are sort of suffering and struggling, and they don't like the idea of waiting for a year or whatever. And if they can afford to pay, or they are insured through work, or for a personal health insurance policy, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, are the barriers sort of easier now, in terms of doctors doing more private work, or is it just literally a mindset thing, and if you're ready, you'll do it?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want out of life, isn't it, really? Consultants obviously got quite busy, big jobs, stressful jobs as it is, but they do have that sort of that time, that day where they could do something if they wanted to, privately, or whatever they want to do. I think in terms of general barriers, it probably isn't. Yeah, there aren't any harder barriers at all. I wouldn't say that at all. I think sometimes we're seeing some hospitals being a bit more strategic about the consultants that they'll give practicing privileges to. So, for example, they know that they want to be doing more, I don't know, shoulder surgery or something. So they might, bring on an upper limb surgeon rather than a lower limb surgeon if they feel like they're sort of fully stocked with those. So you're sort of seeing that a little bit in some hospitals, but otherwise, no, I wouldn't say there are sort of any more or less barriers these days.
And in terms of sort of negotiation skills, because that's something that possibly could be an issue for a lot of doctors. Is that something that you sort of delve in your work?
Not as such, actually. No. So what kind of negotiations are you thinking about?
Well, private doctors negotiating with private hospitals, insurance companies, and other colleagues that they want to collaborate with.
Right. Yeah. I think some consultants feel a bit constrained because it's sort of difficult to negotiate with insurance companies. It can be done, but insurance companies are driving the process so much now, and you have to really tick all of their boxes before they'll send you lots of patients, and it can be frustrating. And of course that comes down to price as well. Often driving down price, how much they'll pay for a consultant to do a particular procedure or outpatient appointment. So yeah, it's difficult to negotiate. It's not impossible. So you're right, maybe I should be thinking about doing something around negotiating with insurers. That'd be quite an interesting one to look at, actually.
And do you think sort of the self-paying industry is that going to get bigger? Is it going to compete with the insurance companies, or we're still not there yet?
I think so. I would say we're maybe not quite there yet. I've not looked at the figures for a while, but my understanding is that the proportion of self-pay of all the private market has gone up a lot, and it's probably the highest it's been, I don't know, ever, or certainly for a long time. So I think it was roughly a third of patients that went private were self-pay. So that's changed a lot. But in terms of the overall numbers of private patients, I don't know that number has massively increased yet. It's just that the payment method has changed slightly. But as we said, with waiting lists as they are, I imagine it will get bigger, and the private market will get bigger.
I mean, have you done any sort of marketing work for the NHS per se?
For the NHS, no, I haven't. No, I've always worked for healthcare providers like Bupa or BMI or Circle as they are now.
Has it ever tickled your fancy, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I know a few people who have had some really interesting roles around PR communications and communication manager roles. So yeah, it would be interesting. And I used to work with a lady who was really involved in a smoking cessation program up in the northwest of England, and that sounded like really fascinating, and would have been a fantastic thing to be a part of. So yeah, it does sort of tickle the fancy a little bit. It would be fascinating to do, but I'm finally grasping that entrepreneurial nettle, and it won't be for a little while. Hopefully, this what I'm doing now will carry me on for a few years at least.
Yeah, I mean, once you sell, your egg for a few £billion, I'm sure you can, go back into the NHS as a marketing whiz kid.
Yeah, I wonder how I'd be viewed if I mean, what's your view of the role of private healthcare in the UK? Like, have you ever
I mean, I haven't had that much experience. I mean, I first sort of delved in back in 2018, and it was quite fascinating. I mean, I did a few years in the charity sector, and I've been an NHS worker since 1999. So Charity was really interesting because you're sort of, negotiating fundraising and different stakeholders, and
Right.
dealing with the work itself. So that was interesting. And private sector is sort of pretty much the same, really. I mean, you're always negotiating with different people in different parts of the same cog. Are the patients more demanding? I think they expect a lot more, for sure. And let's say the sort of level of transparency is probably a bit greater as well, because there's a lot more articulation of expectations. And I guess, levels of litigation is a lot more as well. So I noticed that when I was in the private healthcare sector.
Oh, really? Yeah. Actually, I don't know the numbers around that. That'd be quite interesting to look at.
Yeah, I sort of noticed that. But in terms of
when you say demanding, patients are more demanding, because obviously
I think their expectation was a lot more, not necessarily sort of demanding. It was just because they have a certain level of expectation, and you had to meet them at that expectation and then change them accordingly.
So what were those expectations? Is it around speed? Is it around, as you say, transparency?
Results, I think. Results.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
that's interesting.
They wanted speed of results.
Yeah.
That was their underlying, that was the impression that I got, more than when I worked in the NHS. There was a sort of a bit more, acceptance there.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
the more
speed of access to you, and therefore getting the health outcome quicker.
Yeah, that was quite difficult for me to adjust to, I must say.
Right, was it? Yeah.
It's like you in the NHS, you walk in, you do your thing, and you walk out, and that's that. Whereas in the private health sector, you're sort of on 24/7. And that was a strange mind shift to kind of get through.
Oh, really? That's interesting. You said that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and now I've sort of gone back into the private healthcare sector again. I'm a bit more accepting of being available 24/7 again.
But it must be nice in terms of like probably having longer with the patients, giving that sort of one-to-one care a bit more, maybe.
Well, I don't like all the patients. It's not the right thing to say at all. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot more demands, for sure. A lot more demands. In the olden days, I would have sworn a few words about some of these patients, but hey, we've moved on.
In that sort of world. Do you not say you don't see that in the NHS as well?
Yeah. I mean, you see it in the
world
NHS
where people want instant everything, don't they? It's that Netflix society, as they say. Everything's on instant. Want it now. On demand.
I don't see that as much in the NHS. I don't see that as much. Yeah. I guess
just grateful to see you.
I think the perceptions from me is because, I perceive the NHS to be like this, and then I sort of project my perception on the patient, saying that they're not as demanding. Whereas, because my perception in the private healthcare sector is, oh my God, it's like, the monetary aspect comes into the equation, and then I have a certain perception of that monetary equation, and then I project that perception onto the patient and client. So I think that's what's happening there.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah. I think that's what's happening in those situations. Whereas, if I, kind of equilibrate those two perceptions and sort of try and bring them together, yeah, you're probably right. There's probably no difference whatsoever. So, but because I see a lot more in the NHS, you kind of get into a routine really quickly. And because I see less in the private sector, it's sort of a lot more heightened. It's like you and you're going to the gym, you know, you've been once and you start feeling all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
Yeah. Some good, some niggles in the knee.
Yeah. So some of them are niggles, and you think there's oh my god, but you know, it's just part and parcel of growing something that's not so routine.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
So I mean, do you think marketing should be, you know, essentially taught in medical schools and in healthcare sort of
Well,
education institutions?
that's a great question. I don't know if I would be brave enough to say that, because we're
You'd
in a
be in
world
demand.
where,
I mean, you know, that could be
yeah,
another kind of, you know, feather to your cap, so to speak.
yeah, it would. Yeah. Like we said before, we're in a country with the NHS, which is obviously amazing, and people are very protective of the NHS. Again, rightfully. There are some people who are quite militant about it as well. So if you were to say that, and teaching about marketing, that probably suggests that you're not forcing, but encouraging people down a line to go private, and that might not go down well with absolutely everybody.
I mean, do you see the need for marketing within the NHS? You know, for the professional that works within the NHS, is there a scope for that?
That's a really good question. I think in terms of, I think what upsets most people most of the time is communication, isn't it, or lack of, and that maybe doesn't always fall into marketing. That could be down to through service delivery or whatever. But I think there is a lot that could be learned from marketing in terms of communications. That would probably be of benefit. But then, as we mentioned, earlier, there are parts of the NHS that do a lot of marketing, like smoking cessation campaigns and other things like that. So yeah, absolutely, I do think marketing is a bit of a working life skill that people should sort of learn and know about. Yeah, absolutely.
So could we say that another word for marketing is actually communication?
Oh, right. Well, no, because that's when I'm getting on my soapbox, actually. Because so many people think that marketing is just the communication side of things, and I'm very much not of that view. So we talked earlier about doing that marketing research, getting that insight. Brand is different to communications too. There's always different elements of marketing. Communication is a part of marketing, but it is not marketing on its own. So yeah, I'll get on my soapbox on that idea.
So it pees you off when you hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do, because it just sort of it's just not a full understanding of what marketing is. Maybe marketing needs a better marketing campaign for itself to really explain that to people. But when you think, oh, marketing is just adverts and excuse me, or sales posts, social posts. Yeah, that's a very small fraction of what marketing really is, in my opinion.
I mean, if you were to sort of take a hypothetical head of marketing department, chief marketing officer of the NHS, what would you call yourself and what would you do?
That's a big question. Yeah, I guess something, the standard title, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, or something like that. I would. It's really interesting, because obviously the NHS is structured in quite a unique way in terms of how it's funded, and there's big conversations around prevention rather than cure, and I think there could be some really amazing health outcomes and benefits to the NHS if we were able to do those sort of preventative campaigns, if that makes sense. But it's very difficult to do that, because obviously the hospitals and everywhere gets funded for the patients that they see, and because of that funding sort of structure and model is quite complicated, it's very difficult to sort of prove the cause and result of those types of things. So yeah, I'd like to sort of do more on the preventative and side of things, and sort of, if you see what I mean, like preventing people going into or needing interventions at a later date. But I think that would be really, really interesting to look at.
What kind of age
hard.
group would you be attacking in terms of prevention and
I guess that comes down to the particular
anything that takes your fancy. I mean, for me, I think the earlier the better. Particularly health habits. I think
absolutely,
that's really important.
So again, I don't know the numbers, but imagine how much you might be able to save the NHS treating diabetic patients, for example. If you could reduce type 2 diabetes with, and you do see that with healthy eating campaigns and that from the NHS. You do sort of see stuff like that, but I'd love to sort of really figure out if you could do that on a broader scale, and maybe for some other less obvious conditions, perhaps. I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head at the moment, so I don't have a particular one that I can think of, but that kind of thing would be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you've got the brain power for it.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people think marketing is just sort of a simple thing, and they don't take it seriously enough, and which is a shame, really. But that's the case with most things, we tend to brush it off as something that's been simple, but in fact, it's super complicated, and
if you don't work,
it can get quite overwhelming sometimes.
And I've had that, again, working for Bupa or larger companies, and you think you get sort of other people going, oh, it's just sort of marketing, just sort of doing this, and I go, oh, well, you're just I don't know, adding a few things up in accounting, or HR, you're just doing a couple of policies and organizing the the Red Nose Day celebration. Well, you could be really like condescending and sort of about other departments. It's not until you actually get in and really understand those jobs and roles that you think, oh wow, this is actually really big. So I think we all do that to an extent, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And it's only until you put your foot in the water do you realize how hot or cold it is, and how unexpected it is. Is there kind of like an ideal number of workers within a private practice, or is there something in your head that says, yes, this is going to work, this is really good?
How do you mean?
Like the ideal, I mean, I read somewhere that the ideal number of people in the company is about 5 or 7, something around those kind of numbers, like solo practitioners, or a group of practitioners, or
so a lot of my members at the moment, so I know I'm still fairly new, and we've got still a fairly sort of small group, I suppose, but all of them are solo practitioners. But you couldn't do everything on your own, but you don't necessarily have to employ someone. So absolutely, would recommend a medical secretary, for example. You'd absolutely recommend support on your medical billing, and sorting out all your invoicing and chasing self-pay payments, all that kind of stuff. So you can use you can outsource to people. You can run these things quite virtually. You wouldn't necessarily have to have all of those people in your organization, if that makes sense, in terms of like employed. But you definitely need people to help you, I think. Otherwise you'd never get anything done. You'd be far too busy.
I mean, the technology is there, isn't it, sort of to do all, outsource all these technical things, and I guess absolutely. It's getting better.
Absolutely. Virtual services, virtual medsecs, answering your phone. They don't have to be in an office, and they can be literally anywhere, as long as they're able to pick up the phone at the right time. But something I'm sort of quite a bit preachy about is yeah, to be wary of just outsourcing everything and not having a clue about what they're actually doing. I think it's really important to actually understand every aspect of your business. So when you do go into private practice, that's something that I sort of talk about within private practice surgery is you've got to really understand what it is that you're doing. Otherwise, if you just outsource everything, you're just turning up to do the clinical bits. It might as well just be another shift at your NHS job somewhere. If you actually want to run a practice to run a business, you really got to understand it. And although absolutely would recommend outsourcing, you've got to really understand what it is you're outsourcing, because how can you ever manage their performance? How do you know you're not being taken for a bit of a ride? Or how do you know if something could be done a bit more effectively, or there's duplication going on somewhere? So yeah, I do think it's very important to actually understand the elements of running your business, even if you don't actually do them all. So yeah, that's something I'm sort of quite preachy about.
No, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. And in terms of comparing our sort of private sector to the US sector, is it sort of totally different, or are there some similarities?
In terms of marketing, they do that. They're way ahead of us, I suppose, if ahead is the right way of positioning it. They do that an awful lot, because they are promoting themselves, and because the patient chooses who they want to go to, and all the funding systems are slightly different. So yeah, there is a lot more promotion in the States. And there's stuff we can absolutely sort of learn from them, but I certainly wouldn't want it to be like the States, where it's all sort of insured, and there's no NHS. It's quite different system. I wouldn't want it to be completely out there, but in terms of how they do market themselves a bit, there's absolutely stuff we could probably learn from them. Like every single one's going to have their own website, for example, which isn't always the case with consultants and clinicians in this country. I think it's just so important, particularly in this world where we Google everything, and everyone checks out reviews for everything. So you've got to be on a review platform, whether you like the sound of that or not. All those types of things, they're just sort of that bit further ahead, because it's a lot more competitive out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been really fascinating, and I'm sure the listeners listening to this have been enticed by actually going out into the private sector and being more interested in marketing. What do you think?
Thanks. Well, yeah, who knows? I hope so. I mean, I wouldn't want to be seen to be taking anybody away from the NHS or anything like that. But if you do work privately, then I can absolutely help you through private practice surgery. So would love to be able to do that. But if not, there are lots of other good resources out there too.
Awesome. And let's finish on this. I mean, what are your 3 top tips to aspiring physicians and surgeons who want to get into the private sector, apart from obviously contacting you? That's not a given. You can't pick that one.
Yeah, I touched on it earlier. I think one of the most underrated parts of marketing communications is those web profiles. So really put some thought into your profile, because you can use it on your website, you can use it on a review website, an insurer directory, a hospital directory. You don't have to be really, really salesy about it, but just try and sort of make it clear what it is you do, who you treat, who the people you'd like to treat, and what you're good at. Get a bit of personality across as well. So spend some time on those profiles, because they're such an underrated thing. Like I said, nobody views them unless you're actually looking for a doctor right there and then. So if you sort of told any marketer that you could put your product or service in front of a customer who wants to buy right there and then, they'd bite your arm off. And that's what those profiles can do for doctors, but not everybody gives them the love that they should have, I think. So definitely spend some time on your profile, whether that's you write it yourself, maybe you can outsource that, right? You can, we offer a service through that for that as well, but there are other writers out there who can do that. So I definitely think it's important to do that. Again, touching on what we said earlier about doing that sort of that prep work, so really understanding who your customer is. So it sounds like a fluffy thing, but a fluffy marketing thing, but if you put marketing personas together, so basically customer persona, so of the GP referrer, typical GP referrer or allied health professional, and the ideal patient, I would really spend time on putting those personas together, because it just makes everything else so much more easier. If you can imagine someone in this persona that you've created, who you're writing for, so every time you do write your web profile, you know who you're writing for. If you're ever doing an event, you've got in your mind exactly what that person is like and what they're thinking about and what their problems are, and it makes it easier for you to address them and be really super helpful to them. So like I say, it feels a bit like a fluffy marketing thing, these GP and patient personas, but it's definitely something that I would recommend doing. And then the last one, again, we've touched on it, have a website and do a bit of online marketing as well. So not just the website, but the free stuff out there, such as setting up your Google My Business profile. That can make a real difference, and it's sort of instant web digital marketing exposure presence. And when people start to Google you, because they will, whether you're being suggested by their insurance company or by a friend or whatever, they're going to be Googling you. So you want to make sure you're there and controlling exactly how you're being positioned and presented to those people. So I guess those would be my top three.
Cool.
And of course, we can help you do all of those three things.
How can people get hold of you? What's the best way?
Well, you can come to the website, privatepracticesurgery.co.uk. Or I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot, so search for Chris Rogers Marketing, and you should find me.
Cool. I mean, I did tell a lie. That's not my last question. I like to finish on this, which is, if we can go back to sort of Chris, the 18-year-old or the 17-year-old or the 19-year-old who's about to start their university course, and given that you've seen what you've seen so far, what would be your three top tips to that Chris?
What would I tell 18-year-old Chris? So it's obviously very personal to me, isn't it? But I've always cared far too much about what other people think. I'm worried about looking stupid in front of people, and I think as time has gone on, and it's still something that bothers me now, but as you get older, you just sort of get over it, don't you? And you realize that nobody really cares. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Obviously your friends and family and the right people care, but if looking silly or whatever in front of somebody that it's forgotten about almost immediately. Nobody really cares. We're all far too bothered about themselves. So I would definitely tell myself that nobody really cares. Just go for it, have a go. And I do think I probably would have got to where I wanted to be a lot quicker. Like I say, I've finally delving into some proper trying to start my own business in my mid to late 30s. Maybe I'd have done that a lot quicker if I'd stopped worrying about what people thought about me so much. I'm also my own biggest critic, so I'd probably tell myself to just not be so hard on myself.
Give yourself some slack.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's ridiculous, the tiny things that I'd beat myself up on, but would never, I would never do that to somebody else. I'd never hold somebody else to that standard. Even something, tiny insignificant things that don't really mean anything, right? So but I'll beat myself up about that. Don't be so hard on yourself. That would be quite a nice one to tell myself, I think. And I guess probably sort of, I think it's a bit of a common answer you get, actually. Have more fun. I think that, those two things have probably stopped me having as much fun as I could have done. And that's not
Yeah.
to say that I've had an
Sure.
unfun, boring life. I've done a lot of great things, but whether I sort of fully embraced them and enjoyed them, because those two things make you feel a little bit more reserved, don't they? When you're worrying about what people think too much.
Yeah, I mean, we had a sort of a semi-emergency situation at work the other day, and yeah, we sort of turned it into a fun event, if you can, but
Okay.
we did, and yeah, it worked out all right. It wasn't as bad as it could have been if we kept
And
it
it
at.
Yeah, and it really is, right? It really is as bad as
No,
you
it's it's not
feel it
that bad.
might. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I saw this video somewhere of this guy who had a horrendous car accident. Luckily he was okay. And then he
right.
came out, and it was he was having a fun time with the policeman and fire brigade, which was quite and it was inspiring, I must say. It was
Yeah.
inspiring, and it was quite enjoyable to watch. It's been great, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I really, really enjoyed it.